Welcome to the TCPalm Editorial Board meeting to interview candidates in the election for Indian River County School Board District 2. I'm Larry Reisman, columnist and community editor, and I'm joined by fellow editorial board members Adam Neal, our editor and news director, Blake Fontenay and Ed Killer, columnists, and Louise Filipina, reader advisory board member. Special thanks to our guests today for meeting with us and streamlining the process by completing questionnaires ahead of time. Board members have reviewed them. Questionnaires and replays of our editorial board interviews can be found at tcpalm.com/elections. At the conclusion of this interview, editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in this race. I'll lead the questioning and open it up to other editorial board members at the end. We might end up having more of a conversation than just a simple Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in 45 minutes. This is really important with 4 people. I'm sorry, not 45 minutes. That was about a little over an hour and 10 minutes or so. We'll try to get you out of here quickly, but this is really important. Because of those time constraints, we ask that you keep your answers as concise as possible. So we'll start the questioning with Ms. Corbin, which is, please cite 3 metrics you will use to help determine whether the school district is meeting its mission each year.
Repeat the question for me, sir.
Please cite 3 metrics you will use to determine whether the school district is meeting its mission each year.
The first message would be the strategic plan that they have in place, to follow what's in the strategic plan, also to do how we're progress monitoring the strategic plan, and also how are we developing the goals that we have in the strategic plan. So it would be following the strategic plan, looking at the goals and objectives that we have in place, and also following a progress monitoring system to see if we're meeting the goals.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
Yeah, so the 3 we'll be looking at, I'm really excited that we have the ability to check out KPIs using the Power BI tool so that we have that data right at our fingertips. And I'm excited about the change in the assessments this year. You know, we've been used to FSA, and state decisions have been made now that the kids are going to be, our students are going to be assessed more frequently, so that we can track data more often, which is more data, good stuff. We can pick things apart. And then we have to be looking really closely at the African American Achievement Plan and making sure that we are meeting the needs so that we can handle the desegregation order appropriately. And that includes making sure that we're recruiting the right kind of leadership in our school district. So I would be wanting to look at that data too, to make sure that the reflection in our leadership matches what our student body looks like.
Thank you. Mr. Post?
Yes, thank you. Progress monitoring of results is going to be a huge for us. The ability to actually have data earlier in the year rather than later in the year, so that teachers can assess those students, have their assessments, and be able to work with them as the year progresses, rather than at the end of the year not getting the results until midsummer, which really defeats the purpose. So progress monitoring to make sure that we're hitting our data metrics. In regards to other metrics, the lowest quartile, a lot of times our students that are in the lowest quartile count for more points for our district in terms of being able to kind of move the numbers, and that could be socially economically disadvantaged students, to make sure that we're hitting those marks as well. So that would be another characteristic that I would want to make sure. And then the other thing I would say is the teacher situation, in terms of, do we have enough teachers? Are we losing teachers? Are we gaining teachers? What percentage of teachers are we unable to replace? That's been an issue where a teacher retires or leaves or gets sick, and they have long-term subs or multiple subs in the classroom rather than actually having a certified teacher in there. And so those are 3 metrics that I would use moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosario.
Thank you so much for having us. I don't know if we were able to do an introduction, but thank you so much for this opportunity. I would say, similar to the other candidates, the progress monitoring and the diagnostic tools that are now available, or that will soon be available for teachers and for the district, on a regular basis to be able to track students using those tools, those are going to be extremely helpful rather than waiting until the end of the year to get that monitoring tool or the data, the monitoring data. The next thing I would suggest is the strategic plan. Our African American Achievement Plan is now included within the strategic plan. So the positive is when we say the strategic plan, it is inclusive of the African American Achievement Plan. And then the last metric that I would use are the superintendent's intended targets. Every year he selects some specific targets that are aligned with the strategic plan. And because our one of our only hired employees as a school board is the superintendent, it's important that we know what his targets are so that we can monitor whether they have been achieved or not. So all of these together would be really focused on what does the data tell us. And using our Power BI for all of these metrics would be incredibly important.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Gibbs on the next question. What are the 3 most important things our school children should learn before high school graduation?
The 3 most important things that our students should learn before high school graduation. They need to be reading on grade level. They need to be reading in a way that doesn't just reflect regurgitation of word calling. They need to have a deep understanding of literary comprehension, for sure. The readers are leaders. It's got to be number 1. They have to be strong readers. And it has to be measurable in a number of different ways. Students should have completed all of the math eligible stuff that they need to graduate from high school. They need algebra, they need geometry, they need advanced math if they can get there. But even more importantly, in math, I think a lot of kids get to those advanced math classes and they've never really mastered the basics. I still see kids counting on their fingers, still trying to figure out the basic things. So I think we need to make sure that they have a really strong understanding of those underlying fundamentals before we make them move on to more advanced things, because we're just setting them up to fail. And then I think our students need a really good, strong, solid, factual understanding of our country's history. It was one of my favorite things to teach when I was in the classroom was 4th grade social studies, getting our young ones to understand the past so that we can inform our future. So those 3 things: absolutely strong reading comprehension, really strong basic math, and then into advanced math, and a really strong factual understanding of American history.
Thank you, Mr. Post.
Yeah, I think the first thing that we need to make sure, which I really like, Governor DeSantis chose to have a financial awareness. Our students need to have some financial awareness. While I'm a math teacher, taught many high levels of math, the basic concept of money and how our students are able to relate to money so they understand credit and all of those things that go into the real world has got to play a part. So of course we want to educate our students for the high level mathematics, science, those STEM type things. We also need to have a basic foundation so that they know that they're not put behind the 8 ball early in life monetarily, because that does make changes when you talk about those socially, economically disadvantaged students. That would be one thing I would for sure want to make sure that our students are aware of at graduation. You know, the other thing is, again, is to the rigor, how to work hard. Is something that's really important. When you get into the community today, a lot of times I deal with 45 different independent contractors, and a lot of the things I'm hearing about young students and young folks in general is their work ethic is not great. So I think obviously we're going to educate our children. That's paramount. But I think we have to also focus on that rigor so that they understand how difficult the world is tough, and they need to be prepared to work hard and recognize that working hard can open doors for them. And so that learning rigor would be really important as well. And civics is extremely important. Know your rights, know the history of how our founding fathers came about with the Constitution and the rights that we have as individuals. Very important to be involved. And so making sure that we have obviously that financial awareness, that rigor that they'll need, and then that civics on top of the basic education that they're going to need to be able to be successful moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario.
I definitely would say literacy for sure. That is number one. It is apart from parental involvement in a child's life. Literacy is the other most important aspect to a child's growth and their academic achievement. Their success in life is based on literacy. So we really need to emphasize the importance of reading and writing. I would also like to add, I wish there were only two, but I'd like to add civics to that. Civics is incredibly important. Next year, we are adopting the new social studies and civics curriculum process, and it's critical that we have a board member in District 2 who is not only an advocate for social studies and civics, but someone who is going to have their eye open and their ears attentive to some of the indoctrination that should not be included within the curriculum, the new adoption programs. So I would lastly just add math and science. I mean, if we do not have the basics of reading, writing, math, science, and social studies, then what do we have? I mean, that's the basics, the basic tenets of our standards, our Florida Department of Education standards. If we're supposed to be a standards-based district, then we should teach the standards. And the standards include all of these elements within it.
Thank you. Ms. Corbin?
So to piggyback on what everyone has been basically saying, the traditional education goes back to reading, writing, and arithmetics. So that would be the first standard that I would say that we take it back to the traditional learning so that everyone can be with the reading, writing, and arithmetic. The second one would be, for me, would be the eligibility requirements to make sure that we don't let our children get all the way up to their senior year to figure out that they haven't met the graduation requirements for them to graduate. And also, I think a strong point would be career paths. We have to develop programs that are keeping our children competitive so that they will be competitive in this global marketplace. We have our children, when they're leaving the school system, they're not career path ready to be able to walk onto jobs and have the basic understanding of how to even do a resume or to how to complete an application. So I think if we put those systems back in place to build those programs, to have those children ready for career paths, not only college bound, but career paths for those that are not going to extend out to college. So those are the three things that I think that would be very important is reading, writing, and arithmetic, meeting the eligibility requirements, and building some type of career path programs.
Thank you. Next question, I think we'll start with Mr. Post. Can you please cite a specific example of an ethical kind of challenge you faced in life? How did you handle it?
I was the head weightlifting coach at St. Cloud High School. We had finished top 5 in the state the previous year. And I had a situation where the cheerleading coach came to me and said, I need some spotters on a trip. We're heading to Virginia, and I need some spotters for my cheerleaders. Do you have some weightlifters that you could ask to see if they would want to be spotters? And I had 5 young men that were my weightlifters that volunteered to go to Virginia on this trip. And unfortunately, on this trip, on a school-related function, they were caught drinking. And when they got back, they were suspended from school, which was a 5-day suspension. And I also, as the head weightlifting coach, suspended them from the next weightlifting meet, which was the conference championship. And we had won that meet 6 years in a row. And I will tell you, it was not a hard decision for me. I was not concerned about winning. I thought we had a chance. We ended up finishing 3rd. I thought we would have a chance even without them. They were five. Those five gentlemen participated in the state weightlifting meet the following 2 weeks later, because I had suspended them from the next meet. And I will tell you that my integrity is far more important than winning. And when it comes to that, trying to teach, as a coach, as a parent, I tried to teach them a valuable life lesson, that there are consequences for our actions. And unfortunately, we ended up finishing third in that meet, but it was the right decision for sure.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario?
Wow, this one is a challenge. Well, there are some that I have personally faced that really, because ethics is so rooted in my values and what I believe, even my faith is directed by my moral principles. I live by the biblical truth, and I try very hard to practice that. So when dealing on the school board with the issue of the library books that had pornography or sexually graphic content in it, it was an ethical issue for me. It was an issue of, is this right or is this wrong? And then when it was very plain and clear to me that the statutes would support that this content was wrong, moving forward at the school district level the way that I did, bringing this up for a vote, which was unanimously supported by the other board members, to charge the superintendent with a full review of our library books. That was something that was certainly the goal, or rather the center pull for me with regard to ethics and whether this was an ethical issue to address. It was real. It became real. And it still is. It still is an ethical issue for me. And clearly, I strongly believe that it is still supported by the law. But I would use that as an example. It certainly is a learning opportunity for everyone as we move forward in the school district. And as it pertains to children who are under 18, we have to protect their innocence. That's our number one priority.
Thank you. Ms. Corbin, I believe you're next.
I would have to go with the situation with my son. I have a son that's on the spectrum of autism, and he's very sensitive. He's very aware. Well, he was in a situation to where he was in the classroom and he was caught cheating. He was giving answers to another child in the classroom, and the teacher took the paper away from him and the child, and they called both parents. So when my son was in the room, he was not afraid of telling me the truth, because we practice that truth is the only way, that you have to tell the truth of situations. He was more worried about he disappointed himself, that he knew and understood the situation, that it was wrong for him to give the answers, but he wanted so much to have that friendship with that person that he walked away from his own ethics and his own practice for friendship. The lesson that we learned from there, and that I tell him, you never lose your integrity. And it's a big word. I didn't really use integrity. I just told him, you never lose your truth for friendship of someone else's. So I use that example for people in life, just to show them that something very small that you think is innocent can have lasting repercussions, because at that point, they could not finish that test. They did not take that test. So he had to accept the 0 in there. And he had to learn that things in life are going to happen, and he had to make the right decisions. So we live by that. We practice that. And that will be the most recent thing that happened that kind of still stands out. And we still talk about to this day, getting ready to go to school. He'll be a middle schooler this year. Very proud of that. And so those are the attributes and the values that I instill in my children every day, is that they have to make the right decision, even when it costs them being friends with someone else.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
I can think of two really challenging times that I had when I was in the classroom with elementary school children, and I think I'll choose to focus on one of them. I had a student coming to school who was clearly having issues at home with the family. And as we all know, it's by law, teachers are required to make that terrible phone call when they think that something's going on. And, you know, I had to have the conversation again with the parents came into it, and there was a custody issue and the child was being harmed. And just walking that very delicate fine line of maintaining a relationship with the people who, you know, whose child this was, and making sure that the trust was all in place for the best possible result for that kid. And just learning all of the legalities that went along with that, and having those conversations with school leadership and the school nurse and, you know, outside parties, things like that. And I'm very proud to say that I still have a relationship with that person, the student. It's been a very long time. They're an adult now, and things have turned out okay. They graduated from high school. They went to college. They have a job. And I'm proud that we were able to work through something that could have gone a number of different ways, and that we were all able to collaborate and follow the procedures and the protocols to make sure that that child was safe and was in the safest possible place, while we were all having, you know, decent conversations, civil conversations with each other, and problem solving for the betterment of that kid.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Rosario on the next question. Please give a specific example of critical race theory being taught in Indian River schools.
Well, we don't have a course teaching critical race theory. We have critical race theory is not shown in our schools as it is in the legal system or in colleges and universities. What we have found is that the critical race theory is coming in through divisive means, coming in through math questions, for example, in a question that would divide one race against the other. Please look at this chart and find how much police brutality is within the black race or the white race. And so things like that is how it has been shown to come up in curriculum. It has been revealed through supplemental videos that students have seen in this particular way. Our law has been written in very specifically that says not just no critical race theory, but also nothing that makes someone feel sorry or feel like they have to apologize for their race to another person or group of people. And so there was a recent video that was revealed. It was not part of the adopted curriculum. It was part of a supplemental curriculum. And it's exactly what I just explained. There were two little kids talking with I think it was a sports coach. And one of them just felt like he or she, I forget, you know, which, if it was a male or a female, felt like they had to I'm sorry, it wasn't the kids, it was the coach who apologized to someone for him being white and the kid being black, and or something to that effect. But our law is very clear not to do that, not to have that show up. So that is very divisive. We also had an opportunity here, or rather I had the opportunity to experience the school district attempting to put out a professional development that was called Courageous Conversations. This was last year. I'm going to say about February or March, midway through the first module of this professional development. There was a question there that basically, you know, to summarize, It said if you wanted to move forward in your relationship with your colleagues or with other people in your life, you have to define your whiteness. And I took offense to that. I don't know how anybody would define their whiteness. So I had a conversation with the superintendent and I asked him to define his whiteness. He couldn't define it. And then I wanted to know, because I am of Hispanic descent, I wanted to know how was I supposed to be, you know, caught in this PD? Do you look at my skin color? Do you look at my ethnicity? You know, what do you look at? The last I remember, because this entire module was really only based around Black or white, the entire module did not include all the other races and all the other ethnicities that we have in our district. And our district is very multicultural and multi-ethnic, and I'm very proud of that. So, you know, the last question that I wanted to know is, how is this going to raise student achievement? How is this going to better our teachers' skill? How is this going to make teaching, make teachers teach at, you know, a high quality, provide high quality instruction? And none of those questions were really answered at the end. The superintendent pulled it because he understood that it was essentially divisive. And then shortly after that, we got the law that came down, the executive order that came down from Governor DeSantis. So it was supported, and I'm glad that he made the right decision at that point. But that's how it's being revealed at the district level. So it's not the same as the way that, you know, we're hearing in the media as it is in colleges and universities. And this has nothing to do with African-American history either. This has nothing to do with not teaching accurate history. This is just not allowing divisive instructional materials or theories in our schools, which are also not supported by standards. Our standards do not have critical race theory within them. And again, if we're going to be a standards-driven district, then we need to make sure that we only teach the standards and nothing else.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Corbin, can you give a specific example of critical race theory being taught in Indian River schools? So
I've never experienced it the way that it is just explained as far as the curriculum that is being used within the school system in the classroom. I'm happy that CRT is not being taught in the classroom, but we have to go back to how the Department of Education, they approve the actual instructional material that we are using to meet the standards that we use to teach our standards by. So that's why it's so imperative to have parents involved when those books come down and the district looks at those books to see what books they're going to be approving for the next calendar school year. It's important to have that parent involvement so that it's another set of eyes that are on there, so that they can raise those questions to say, how does this fit my family? Or how does this fit not just my family, but how does this fit and support all families? Because it's about all families and all children. So since it's not being taught directly in the school system and it's being filtered in different ways, using the standards that we have in place to choose the instructional material that we will be using, having that open forum so that there's enough parents on a panel, there's enough educators on a panel, and then there's the school district on the panel that are vetting these books and really taking a look at a simple math question. Could that math question be interpreted to be some form of social emotional learning or some form of CRT? So that's where the collaborative effort comes together, that we are basically the key holders to whatever the state brings down for the books that they approve. How do we accept those books within our district?
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
So I think this is the time where it makes sense. You know, we talked about the curriculum is approved and it's vetted by the state level, and then the school district chooses which curriculum it wants to use. And of course, we want parent involvement on panels you know, when we have those things. Sometimes can maybe still be misconstrued. Maybe things slip through the cracks. This is the opportunity we have then for appropriate teacher planning time. where our groups of either grade level or, like subject area. My experience is at the elementary level where we would group together by whole grade level and talk about how we were going to collaboratively plan. When we have a group of experienced educators working together and being able to look through their own particular perspectives about things, and we have a diverse teaching population working together so that we can ask those tough questions, I think we're in much better shape of not allowing these controversial things into the classroom. I agree 100% that we need to be focused on student outcome, and divisive conversation isn't going to get us there. I think it's okay to have some deeply critical conversations. We need our kids to be able to, learn how to think, not just what to think. But I think that here's an opportunity for us to make sure that our teachers are having enough and appropriate collaborative planning time, and also to be able to reach up to their administration or over to their administration if they're struggling and they have questions about how they should deliver the material or if they should deliver it at all. Being able to have a clear and transparent relationship with their management, their administration, so that they aren't fearful of asking those questions, so that everyone is a stakeholder in making sure that our kids are getting the best factual information, not based on emotions or opinions.
Thank you. Mr. Post?
Actually do not have a specific example of CRT being used in Indian River County schools. I have what the state has shown when they excluded a few books out of the curriculum, the instructional books, earlier this year when they shared that information. But I think we have to really focus on that parent volunteers at each level, so elementary, middle, and high school, need to be reviewing these books. So I think what we have to really go back to is this concept that parents must be involved with their children's education. This is not drop them off at 7 o'clock in the morning and pick them up at 2 if you're in high school, or 8:30 and 3:30 in middle school, etc., or 7:30 and 8 and 3:30. They have to be more involved. So it's really a call out. This is me as a parent in Indian River County, as a former teacher, is calling out parents to say, please get involved. If you don't know how, ask. Go to the school. How can I get involved in reviewing textbooks, in reviewing the new books for the instructional materials? We put it on the website. It's on the website. It's on Twitter. The district tries that. But folks, we have to take a stand as parents and grandparents and get involved and not wait for these things to come to us and to find out later all this stuff is occurring. The social emotional learning is occurring in the classroom after the fact, because the reality is that some of these things have been in there. They're now being removed, and thankfully, because of the state law that has been put in place, that's not going to be part of it. But in this supplemental materials, like we talked about, the videos, we have to be able to get that stuff before it actually gets in. So it's really, for me, it's pre, not post. So we have to do things beforehand, not afterward. We need to be proactive and not reactive.
Thank you. We're going to go into sort of a lightning round with one word or one letter answers for the next couple of questions, if we can. We'll start with Ms. Corbin. Just a simple yes or no answer, and then we'll go to everybody with this. But did the Indian River County School Board violate the law by not taking challenged books off its shelves?
No.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Gibbs?
No, they didn't. They followed the process.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Post?
Yes, the statute around pornography would be a violation of the law.
Ms. Rosario?
Absolutely.
Pardon? I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is a one-word. This is a one-word answer.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't hear it.
Yes.
I just didn't hear it. Yeah. Okay.
That's okay.
Next question. Next question for Miss. We'll start with Miss Gibbs on this one. Letter grade A through F. Letter grade A through F.
For the whole school district?
Please rate. Well, let me give you each one of them. Please
Okay,
grade
sorry.
the effectiveness. Please grade the effectiveness of the school board, A through F.
B.
Okay, Mr. Post, effectiveness of the school board.
C.
Ms. Rosario.
I would say C minus.
Okay. Ms. Corbin.
I would say a B.
Okay, next one, we'll start with Mr. Post. Can you grade A through F the performance of the superintendent?
A C.
Ms. Rosario.
I'm trying to think. Yesterday we had, I'm sorry, I got to think about the A through F.
A through F.
I would say a C.
Okay. Ms. Corbin.
I would say a B.
Okay, Ms. Gibbs.
A C.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Rosario on the next one. Again, A through F. Can you please give us the school district grade for efforts at teacher retention? Retention only.
I would say a B minus.
Okay. Ms. Corbin.
D.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs.
As in dog.
Thank you. Mr. Post.
D as well, as in dog. D.
Okay.
D like
Thank you.
David.
Thank you. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Next one, we'll go with a 1 to 5 scale. A 1 is the least important. A 5 is the most important. I think we start with Ms. Corbin on this one. How important is transparency by the school board?
5.
Ms. Gibbs?
5.
Mr. Post?
5.
Ms. Rosario?
A 5.
Okay. Ms. Gibbs, so again, a 1 through 5. How important is it to close the racial achievement gap?
A 5.
Mr. Post?
5.
Ms. Rosario?
A 5.
Ms. Corbin?
A 5.
Okay. Mr. Post, again, 1 through 5. How important is it to have a good relationship with the Learning Alliance of Indian River County?
5.
Ms. Rosario?
5.
Okay. Ms. Corbin?
5.
Okay. And Ms. Gibbs?
5.
Okay. Separate question. Let me just see. It's okay. Let me open this up to anybody, any of the other editorial board members. Anybody else have any questions right now? Anybody else? Last chance. Okay.
Larry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. One of the interesting things about this race is all of you have either worked for or with the school district of Indian River County and or other counties in one capacity or another. Can you talk about specifically why you left your job with the district, and were there issues that preceded your departure? We'll start with Ms. Rosario.
When I was working at Storm Grove Middle School, I had injured my back, and I left on family medical leave because I needed back surgery. And so that's why I left. And I, subsequent to that, I had, or following that, I had multiple months, I suppose, months of, rehabilitative time that I needed. So I just never went back, and I never pursued it.
Ms. Corbin, and you're still there. But so you're still there, but what about any prior jobs with education or nonprofits or anything like that? Why did you leave that field?
I had a prior job where my field really came from working with adults and children with developmental disabilities. And I work with the transition of adults that's already in day programs and then transitioning children after they graduate. They graduate, but they still allowed to stay in school to the 22. So that transition from them from the educational realm into the private sector. The job that I was at was not really doing an awesome job with the transition for the children that were coming out of high school. And I didn't see where they were meeting the needs, and the needs were growing because now we had a lot of children that were coming out of high school that had to be with job placements, day programs, independent living programs, and teaching them people first advocacy. So that job, I didn't feel like was a match for me anymore. So I moved with another company, which I actually loved. I climbed my way to be the executive senior director for that program. And I was able to bring in the insight to be able to have that transition and stuff work. It's the same thing with in the elementary. Those fifth graders, when we're transitioning them off to a new realm of learning, moving over into middle school, that's a transition that has to have the right match for the child, for the parents, for everyone that's involved. So I left that company knowing that I was making the right move for the sector of individuals that I was serving. And I look back on it now, I still have relationships with those families. I still communicate with a lot of the graduating students that we had graduate out. And I just think that overall, that was the best move that I could possibly make at that time.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs.
Yeah, so I had been in the district for quite some time, and I moved schools a couple of times for the betterment of the education of my own two children who remain in public schools here in Indian River County. And my last year in the district, I had the amazing opportunity to begin the job that I currently have, which happens right here in the seat where I'm sitting. I have the opportunity to work virtually from home, still in education and professional development with adult learners. And what that does is it provides me the ability to be home with my children, get off the bus. It allows me to have more quality family time. When I was still in Indian River County schools, I was working full-time as a school teacher, and then I was also working for the Learning Alliance 3 days, sometimes 4 days a week after school. And that put a great strain on my family and my children. And I will add, because it's a hot topic right now too, that working both of those jobs, I was still not making the money that I make now in this job where I get to work from home and have more quality time with my family. So that work-life balance really was very important to me, especially at the age that my children were at that time. It's been about 3 years. It was a mutual decision. It was hard to leave those kids, but it was really great to come home to my own family and to my own children and to have more time with them.
Mr. Post.
I taught at Storm Grove Middle School for 6.5 years, and it was extremely difficult to leave. We had an opportunity for my wife to stay at home with our grandson, so we prayed about it. And she left her job to be able to watch him, which put a huge financial stress on us to make. I was making $46,000 a year. Plus the Best and Brightest Scholarship, which is another about $7,000 or so, $7,200 at the time. And we prayed about it, and that was just what we felt the Lord called us to do, for my wife to be at home with my grandson. I wouldn't change that. But in order to be able to do that, I needed to look for additional monies. I will say this though, because I think it's really important for you to recognize this, or the folks that are watching this, is I've worked 2 jobs pretty much my entire life. When I was teaching, I worked 4 to 5 nights a week at Carrabba's Italian Grill. I might have served you if you came into Carrabba's many times. For 6.5 years, I worked at Carrabba's while I was teaching. I had to put 3 students through college, my own kids, and doing that on a teacher salary was not enough to be able to do that. And so I did have a second job. I left this job at 3 days before. You also said, was there something that occurred that maybe kind of moved you in that direction? And there were a couple of things that occurred that I saw in the schools that was pretty concerning. One of those was I broke up a fight in the bathroom. I was on my lunch period in my room. I had to use a restroom, and I went into the boys' bathroom, and there's 5 boys fighting in the bathroom, and I got 2 of them. 3 of them ran off, but we had cameras, out in the hallways and stuff, so I knew that they were going to be able to get those students. And I walked the 2 up to the office and came back into my room and started typing up the discipline referral, the ODR, on our system. And I got a call from administration that said, "Hey, don't write an ODR. I'll handle it. I took care of it." So the reason I say this is because it's really important to understand why that could have happened, meaning they're asking you not to do that. Because every time an ODR occurs, that's on record. So by not writing an ODR, it acted like it didn't happen. So one of the issues that I have with our district is the discipline, in what we're seeing for discipline being off the chart, off the chain, as other teachers have told me. And that happening was very concerning. I would tell you the other concerning part that, again, kind of when you look and you say, okay, where is this headed, was I got asked to go down to Miami to a middle school to observe. Every 8th grader in middle school was taking algebra. By the way, I believe the district this year is requiring all algebra students, 8th graders, to take algebra this year. And I taught algebra honors, I taught geometry honors, I taught algebra, pre-algebra at Storm Grove Middle School. And I have to tell you, I had lots of algebra and pre-algebra students that were significantly behind when it came to math, sometimes 4th and 5th grade levels, couldn't multiply without a calculator, very, very difficult. And when I had talked to the administration about, I really don't think every 8th grade student should take algebra. That they're not going to be prepared. That's, I'll get them to pass the end of course exam because I had pretty much 100% passing ratio rate. But I said, my concern is that you can get a level 3 on the algebra end of course exam, and that's like a 52%, and you can still get a level 3, which is considered passing. And I said, my concern moving forward is that when these students get to high school and they get into geometry and they get into algebra 2, they're not going to do very well. And I was told that's the high school's problem. Now that is a red flag. We should never push it up the chain and let somebody else deal with this. We have to address these things now. So when you look at all of this, between the monetary side, really couldn't support my family on that salary. You look at the discipline issues, you look at what's occurring in the system in terms of the education part, it's pretty darn concerning. And that's why I'm running. I mean, there's lots of reasons. I have a 4-year-old grandson. I want to make sure that when he goes to public school, that he will have the best opportunity to have what we call, a world-class learning experience, that he actually does have that.
Thank you for that. Ms. Corbin, I'm gonna course you've ever taken. Ms. Corbin?
Larry,
Yes.
Larry, you might want to try it again. I think you broke up a little bit.
Okay. Ms. Corbin, what's been the most inspiring course you've ever taken and why?
The most inspiring course I've ever taken throughout my learning career would be English. I had a professor in college, and his name was Mr. English. And ironically, he was the most unique, exotic English teacher I ever had, to basically break down the understanding of how to read, how to write paragraphs, how to understand just the dynamics of English. From there, he was always an awesome teacher. Unfortunately, we lost him 3 years ago. I still have a relationship with his wife and 2 of his sons. But I would say that he really set the foundation for me in learning in his college course, in the English college course that I had him in.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
I'm going to agree that it was my high school AP English teacher with whom I still have a friendship. We weren't friends when I was 18, but we, found each other again later in life. She was my inspiration for deciding to major in English literature in college. She took us to places through books, through literature, through reading comprehension, through poetry, and ancillary materials like the movies that matched the books. And, we watched some Shakespeare because it needs to be heard, not just read off the page. We went everywhere in that class. And she is a true testament to the teacher in the classroom is one of the most important things. She treated us like the experts that she wanted us to be, and she inspired us all to want to be the best students we possibly could. And we wanted to do it a little bit for her, a lot for ourselves, but a little bit for her. And on a personal note, my best friend died from cancer that year while I was still a senior in high school. And she knew him. She had had him the year before, and she knew of the tragedy and the warmth and the compassion and the kindness with which she treated me and the rest of us who knew him. She didn't just gloss right over it. She recognized that we were all humans, even though we were younger than her. And I will hold that relationship, that teacher-student relationship, in my heart for a long time. And I still think about the kinds of things we discussed in class. And I just get all warm and fuzzy thinking about how exciting it is that we can build those relationships in our classrooms and that we hold on to them for the rest of our lives. That was over 30 years ago, and I'll never forget it.
Thank you. Mr. Post?
I have to say the class that affected me the most was logic and proof. I'm a math major, and so Dr. Karen and Dr. Rodriguez over at the University of Central Florida in August, that would have been probably June of 1995, that course. And what was so amazing about that course was being in the math and being able to teach math is they explained the importance of the reason the students need to know why they are doing what they're doing in math. Lots of students can do math, but if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, if I throw you a curveball on a problem, you're not going to be able to figure it out. But if you know why you're doing what you're doing, there's a really good chance you will actually be able to get the problem. I would tell you, though, where I wanted to become a teacher was from 2 math teachers that I had in high school, Laura Cowgill and Gail Leach at St. Cloud High School. I had them each one for 2 years, 2 different classes, one for freshman and senior year, one for sophomore and junior year. And I can tell you that they were the ones who really taught me how to work hard and to work smart. So I use phrases like work smarter, not harder. And part of that is understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And those ladies, I'm friends on Facebook with one. I don't think the other one has a Facebook, but she was a high-level executive in the district office. Laura Cowgill was, now Laura Reinhardt, in Brevard County, but she taught at St. Cloud High School. And so, you think about that. That's 30 years ago. I'm 49, so it's really 31 years ago. And those people made an effect on my life. And I think really as a teacher, for me, that's what I tried to do with my students. This year I was honored by 6 students, 4 from Vero Beach High School in the top 10%, 2 from Sebastian River High School in the top 10%, as being their most impactful teacher. And I learned how to be a good teacher by mimicking and following what those 2 wonderful teachers did for me.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario?
I would say my high school Spanish teacher. Her name was Mrs. Para. She was incredible. She was fun. She was strict. She was more like a mom. But at the same time, she was consistent, dedicated. She had extreme expectations in the classroom, very high expectations, not just for our performance, but I think for her teaching as well. She expected all of us in the classroom to love Spanish as much as she did. And that's a tall order when you are learning a foreign language, especially when you're in high school. And I think, to my recollection, I think we all did. I mean, we loved it just because we loved her. She was attentive, and every year, I'll never forget, every year she would take a group of kids from her class during spring break to study abroad. And we would, I remember one year when I turned 16, I had the opportunity of either having a Sweet 16 birthday party or going on a trip with Mrs. Para. And I chose the trip, of course, and we went to Mexico. And it was wonderful. I don't know, I think it was 7 or 10 days. But it was fantastic. What a learning experience. It is a trip that I have never forgotten. Certainly was probably my first international vacation. But it was wonderful because we got a chance with Mrs. Para and all of our, my fellow friends, I would say classmates, learn the language, learn the culture, really do the Mexico tour. I mean, we went to different cities, and of course, I think Tasco was one of them, and really just embed ourselves in the lives of a foreigner, of someone who lives in a foreign land. And at the end of the day, she became my inspiration for teaching a foreign language. Now, I never taught Spanish as a foreign language, but that's really where I believe the inspiration came from for me to teach English as a foreign language to foreigners who came to our country. So certainly Mrs. Para, and I'll always honor her for the work that she did and for her teaching.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate your answers. The final thing we have today is we'll start with Ms. Gibbs on this. And I got to ask you to keep your answers as concise as possible because there's 4 of you there, and if that's 20 minutes if you each take 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask you if you could take a minute or two to just, if there's something we missed, to please let us know what we missed, what you'd like us to know, what you'd like the community to know. So we'll start with Ms. Gibbs there.
Thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity for all of us to get together again like this to have this conversation. I don't think we missed anything. I think we touched on all the really hot topics and the high points and the low points and the things that, we need to work on for this school system. I would just like to go out by saying that I want to ask everyone in Indian River County who's making the really important decision to vote on who to choose. You've got a bunch of us who have great experience, and you're going to have to think hard about what you want to go with. And I would implore you to choose the person that makes the best decisions for all students and who is able to problem solve and work with a vast, diverse group of people, keeping in mind the lives, the families of all students in our county. Thank you.
Mr. Post.
Yeah, I've said a few things that I just kind of want to reiterate and expand upon just a minute is the discipline issues in our school have got to be addressed. And when you talk about discipline, you're talking about, disrespect to teachers, kids, telling teachers to, go take a hike and not so many nice words. The lack of consequences for the discipline, meaning multiple teachers have contacted me and said, I'll send a kid out and they're going to send them right back. We cannot allow one student or two, whatever the case may be, disrupt other students from learning. It is not acceptable. And so it is important that we actually focus on the discipline. If you talk to teachers, and here's the thing that we have an issue of a culture issue inside of the teachers. They are afraid to talk to administration. They are afraid to say things because a lot of them are on a renewable contract. They don't have tenure. And so you create waves and you get out of here. So a lot of people will tell me, hey, off the record, Josh, discipline's out of control. Literally off the chain is I've heard multiple times from students. And so I think the public needs to recognize that we have some significant discipline issues in the public schools, and that is affecting the learning that's going on. It's affecting scores. It's affecting all of the things that we're talking about. No structure, no discipline is going to, have issues and ramifications in regards to scores, etc. The teachers have very little power in the discipline arena. It goes to the admin. Sometimes the admin has to send it to the district. The district has to approve a suspension until the fight at the Flick happened, where you had 6 fights going on at one time. That is when the district decided that they were going to make the change and give administration back the authority to take care of some of these discipline issues. We need parental involvement. I can't say that enough. Parental involvement, not just on the hot button issues of books in schools. While that is extremely important, we need parental involvement in the day-to-day, what's occurring. I used an example last night at Mr. O'Brien's, Commissioner O'Brien's thing that he had last night. And it was a girl at one of our local high schools who had all A's in her geometry class for each 9 weeks. She got a level 1 on the end of course exam. And the mom said to me, how is that even possible? You get an A for every 9 weeks and you score a level 1. That's scary. What is that saying? We need to look more in depth. If your children don't have homework, they are not being challenged, that's an issue, because especially in math, the only way you learn math is by doing it on a daily basis. So while all these things are said, it is very important for me to recognize that parental rights and what you choose as a parent is extremely important. And as a district, we need to do better. We must do better, because it's actively in our community. It's really important to recognize a poor school system will lead to a poor community eventually, because when people are graduating high school with no skills and no talents and no work ethic, they're going to be relying on the government to take care of them. And we cannot allow that to happen in Indian River County. We have a great place to live. Vote for me on August 23rd, School Board District 2, Josh Post. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario?
Thank you so much. With almost 3 decades of educational experience as a teacher, as a school administrator, and now as your current school board member, I have always loved all things education. There's no other school board member or candidate who champions parental rights and school choice more than me. I'm a homeschool mom. I understand what that is like, making the decision to stay home and teach my son. It wasn't an easy decision, but I did it, and it was, for us, it was the best decision. That said, because I have always been in my adult career in public education, I have the unique perspective of having being able to advocate for both. And that's why school choice is so important for me. And I think that it's important for all parents to be able to have the decision or to at least be given the decision-making abilities for their children. I fully support a parent's right to choose whatever is in the best interest of their child, including their medical freedoms and their educational environment. I suppose that this makes me a fierce advocate for also common sense decision-making, following the rules, also no critical race theory in schools. I guess I'd say that when I was elected in 2018, I thought I knew my role as a school board member. I think you have these grandiose ideas of what it might be like, but it really wasn't until the pandemic hit that I understood the full ramifications of the decisions that a school member makes. So I think it's very important that you know who your school board members are. For me, starting on day one would not be a new transition. For me, of course, I am continuing the work that I was elected in 2018 to do. And when elected on August 23rd by you, I will continue to do the work moving forward that you would elect me to do now. I have lived out my constitutional duty and responsibility to uphold the law and to not rubber stamp everything that the superintendent brings our way. Though many of those things are well and good, they need to be vetted. And you need a board member who's not afraid to ask tough questions, someone who is not afraid to do the research. I have seen the consequences of what can happen when processes are not transparent. And that is something that I believe is very important, that we follow a transparent policy, that we follow policies that are aligned with our procedures. That we follow procedures that are aligned with our policy. Should be the other way around. So I can tell you, not only is the result not good when that happens, but ultimately it will negatively affect children. And so being a kids first minded educator, a lifelong learner, I know the significance of affecting change and making a difference in the lives of children. So my core principles are rooted in limited government, local control, freedom of school choice, curriculum, and fiscal responsibility, transparency, and of course, equal opportunities for all students. So I am the most experienced and the most qualified of all candidates rerunning for District 2. I am the consistent voice of reason and common sense, a person who listens to her constituents. So on August 23rd, let us always reach and teach every kid, every day, in every way. For more information, please visit www.reelectjackie.com. Thank you so much.
Ms. Corbin.
So I hear a lot, as in last night and tonight, that we're talking about the discipline. So now my role, I advocate for the mental health awareness, supports, and trainings for our teachers to recognize adverse children experiences and trauma, and also having our support staff. We have to be able to not be afraid of getting to the root of where the discipline is coming from. And it's a behavior. If you can just imagine, if you have a 5-year-old child that has a backpack on their back, they put this backpack on, it's filled with books, they put everything in for the next day. And when they get to that classroom, they unzip that book bag. And not only is it filled with books, it's filled with trauma. Social and economical factors into behaviors that are coming in and being exposed in our classroom. Post-COVID gave us a real raw deal with our children coming back now within the classroom setting, and having those trainings in place so that teachers can recognize that, okay, so little Alvin has been acting out in my classroom now for the last 3 weeks, and I don't know what's going on with him. Something is going on with him. The behavior is getting out of control. So now his trauma is causing secondary trauma in the classrooms. So when we peel back the layer of the onions and we find out the barriers, what's going on with little Tommy? We found out that little Tommy's grandmother has been dying on the couch in the living room for the last 3 days, with hospice coming into the home. The mother is working 2 jobs. She see him in the morning time, but she's not able to put him to bed at nighttime. He's spending for himself at home. All of those barriers and traumas come to the safest place he knows in his life, and that is the school. So when he unzips that book bag, he unzips all of that inside of that classroom, and he dumps it there for the teacher and now the support staff to figure out, how do we support this child? Now, I'm not an advocate for medication. There are some parents that, with the permission with parents of getting children, take the stigma of the mental health out of it. Let's look at the social and emotional learning of this child. With advocating with the parent to say, let us help you, let us support you and your child within the school system to see if we can break those barriers of that behavior. If we start the foundation early, we will be able to follow that child throughout the school system. We have to be okay having those uncomfortable conversations with parents, getting parents permission to work with them to serve the embetterment of their child. Not all children suffer from barriers in their life. Some children just may need to speak with someone. So being able to have those uncomfortable conversations with parents, gaining that parent trust, working with parents. I'm a mother of 8, so I advocate strongly that I make decisions for my children in the betterment of their education. But I hear so much about the discipline. There's a root to the discipline. And we have to be okay to put that first for the wellness of the whole child. You can't teach a broken child. There's no way that a broken, hurt child can learn. An angry, disgruntled child can learn unless we're okay having that uncomfortable conversation about mental health awareness. Take the stigma out of it, and let's focus on the embetterment of our children. It's time to redesign our school system and focus on education and the wellness of all children, not just some children. And parental consent, parental involvement, parental accountability. Just as we hold our children accountable, we have to hold our parents accountable for our children. They are the first responders. They are the ones that's holding the key to all success of children. So on August 23rd, the catchphrase that I have is always to remember to tell a friend to vote Corbin on August 23rd. You can also go to my website at votecorbin2022.com and just see what I'm about. When it's time to make the right decisions, we have to make the right decisions for all children, not just some children.
Thank you, Ms. Corbin, for the last word there. Thank you for volunteering to run this campaign. It's not easy, but it's an essential part of our democracy. And to the folks out in the audience, we ask that you continue to visit tcpalm.com/elections for your latest election information. To all of you, good luck in your campaign this year, and we hope to see you out on the trail. Take care now.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mary.